Film Club.
Give me my Al Pacino impression.
I'm not going to kiss you.
Say hello to my little friend.
Whoa.
Wrong film. Thank you very much for joining us, episode of Film Club. I'm one of your hosts, Andy Harrison. To my right, as always, it's what we said, Marlon Brando last time. You can be Al Pacino if you really want to be.
No, you are, because you did that terrible impression.
The Godfather of Film Club, it's Andy Donaldson.
Hello.
Every single week in Film Club, we invite you along to watch a film with us. We dive into some of cinema's best before coming back here to talk it out. Andy, last week we discussed one of cinema's best. This week, we talk about one of cinema's best sequels.
That was smooth. I like that. Big fan. If I had watched, I would say time for that.
I hate him so much.
So, The Godfather Part 2, if I could summarise this, I wouldn't say unsubscribe, but at the same time, you've probably watched The Godfather. If you haven't watched The Godfather, fucking watch The Godfather first. Secondly, if you watched The Godfather and you haven't watched Godfather Part 2, watch this. So, after that, what happens in The Godfather Part 2? It's the fall of the Corleone family.
So, right,
Specifically Michael.
back to my little story, because I hadn't seen The Godfather before last week, and I hadn't seen The Godfather Part 2 before now. Going into The Godfather, I had no idea The Godfather, Marlon Brando, died. I had absolutely no idea, which meant that when he died during that film, my head suddenly started going, well, hang on, what the hell is The Godfather 2 and 3 about? Is The Godfather 2 a prequel? Because I'd heard sort of like this thing about like I'd had this kind of like vague memory of someone saying it was a prequel once, but then I had another memory of someone saying it was a sequel once. Turns out it's bloody both.
Yeah, which is incredible.
And if there's one criticism I could lobby at The Godfather Part 1, I should have mentioned it in the last episode, is that I found the protagonist, Michael Corleone, to be less interesting than the Godfather, Vito Corleone.
I think that's expected.
And I think they knew it so much that that's where the idea for the flashbacks came for this film.
Why? Who did you find more interesting?
Vito Corleone.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I get you. But also in this film, we mentioned last week about how Michael's the more subdued. He's a subdued performance for Al Pacino. And his character as well, he's like the black sheep of the family, and he slowly rises into power and he leads the family. He has all this stuff. He is interesting. He has many story movements, but it's this that really gets how he is. You understand what Michael is as a character. You understand his father's influence him, the decisions he makes throughout the film, like whether it's Hyman Roth and stuff like that. You know, he can see what the plans are going through. He can see with the Fredo and stuff like that. He can meander around, wrong word to use. He can like kind of net all that kind of what's going to happen and what has happened in the future, which is something they spoke about in The Godfather Part 1. Like, you know, case in point, in The Godfather Part 1, they speak to Tom and say, sorry, Tom, I can't say the word, you're not going to be our conciliage, or whatever it is. Probably the wrong word to use. Because you're not a war one. And what I mean by a war one is when you're in a state of war, you're fighting, you've got these murders going on because it's just business. They mention that many times, it's just business. And when you go in this one, you just see this performance blow out by Al Pacino. I kind of lost my train of thought a little bit. But going back, he's incredible. He's incredible. What he's incredible at doing, and this film for me is drawn around him. You can't.
Yeah. I mean, and the nice thing is he's allowed to kind of hold the film from the beginning this time.
Yes.
Whereas in the first one that wasn't the case.
But in what's amazing, I mean, it starts off in. Does it start off? It starts off with the young Vito. I should know. I've just watched it. My point is, you have this amazing performance, but it's almost like you get the Vito stuff on the side that turns out to be, I think my favourite scene of this film, arguably one of the favourites, is Vito walking across the rooftop, stalking that guy to go for his kill. And that was the killer moment. That was the shooting of the police chief and Salazar, whatever his name is. That was that defining moment of The Godfather Part 2, in amongst obviously the Fredo stuff as well.
Well, that also, I think that lends itself to the strengths of the film, because the strengths of the film, as I say, it's not just retreading what happened in the first Godfather.
Yeah.
Instead, what we're doing here is we're doing this like prequel story, and that allows them to introduce some incredible elements. First off,
the production, by the way. Oh, is that what you're going to say?
Okay, so first off, the production, right?
How? 1920s, 1930s, early Prohibition era?
And I mentioned last episode about him blowing loads of money on sets. Here, just times that by like 10.
Incredible.
Because
that street is amazing.
It's utterly stunning, and the fact that they were allowed to build that just speaks to the strength of how well The Godfather did and how much faith was then put into Francis Ford Coppola in terms of
he had more creativity. Andy mentioned about how the studio are a bit more imposing in the first one. This is a bit more Coppola's like kind of his own creative freedom.
I think he's basically said before that like he was essentially left to do this. Like for
Really?
the most part, they
Okay.
were just kind of like, go do a sequel.
Yeah.
And then off he went. Now, the second part that this also allows him to introduce. Last time we spoke quite a lot about how good the performances and the casting and whatnot is in this film. And then what they do for the sequel is they go and cast Robert De Niro as a young Vito Corleone.
He's killer. Imagine him doing that role.
Holy shit.
He kills it. He kills it. Because imagine him going that role, like how significant. I mean, the difference between The Godfather, I don't know how long it is.
So The Godfather Part
Came out-
1 is
so this is
just
2
under
years
3
after.
hours. This is like 3
Oh, sorry, no, I meant when the year it came out. So this is
2 years later.
Yes, it's 2 years later. So imagine seeing the performance, well-renowned performance by Marlon Brando, somebody like you got an Academy Award for. Imagine having to almost recreate that, but a younger individual, your own taking of it. He kills it. He kills it. He's so quiet. He's all this. He only speaks when he needs to. And he's like, amazing scene when he's speaking to the boss guy, I can't remember his name, and he's just like, I'll make him an offer he can't refuse, like this. And he sits down, he's like, oh, I don't have any money. You know how it is.
It's like there's a small hint of Brando in there.
It's stunning.
Which is the best thing I think he could have done, rather than just try and do a Brando imitation.
Yep.
As we nailed last week, just FYI, we absolutely nailed it last week. Instead, what he does is he just puts small little suggestions in there of who would eventually grow into being that character.
And like, you know, that scene, for example, and the way he comes across, he avenges his mother and family at the end with that guy, which is
excellent framing device. Like from the moment you get his murder of his mother in front of him, I think everybody in the cinema at that point would be waiting for the sort of the revenge sequence,
full circle,
because you kind of know where it's going to go, but the build-up is still so immensely satisfying. And to have him sort of like, not just like, it's almost, he has almost a swagger to him as he's going into that place for the first time. Sorry, when he goes back to that place for the first time. And everything that De Niro does in this film is in no way distracting. It's all additive. It's all excellent. It's so easy when you're picking up an iconic role to fudge it and become distracting. And to just kind of think like, I always think of, what's his name, who did Han Solo recently.
Yes.
I find that immensely distracting. Because, and then De Niro gets this a little bit easier because he's so removed from that character in terms of years. You know, there's like solid 20 years or something in between the two of them happening. But he's just excellent.
And then to contrast that, in the Fall, so De Niro's character plays Vito, who is the rise of Vito. And whilst you have this rise going up like that, you have this fall going up like that. This film,
what a perfect sort of mirror of like, here's the building of the family, here's the sort of destruction of the family.
It's amazing. It's so well done. Al Pacino in this film is fucking killer.
He is. Yeah.
Absolutely. I won't mention it at the start like this, but you see in the first Godfather, you see like a couple of times where he shouts, he's like, don't ask me about family business, don't ask me about that. The second film, you see what happens to Fredo.
Because in the first film, it's all about him learning to deal with those things and kind of being good at those things.
Yeah.
Whereas here, you get to push him to his limits. Here, the script makes him bend and break.
Yes.
And that is
implode.
And that is, Al Pacino plays it so well.
It's incredible. Like that scene where he's just looking like this and Kay tells him that it was an abortion, not a miscarriage like this.
Oh my God, yeah. It's
fucking hell.
And then the escalation of like, where he's like, you're not going to take my kids from me.
Yep.
And like,
and then that scene at the end where she's at the door and she can't say kids and he just walks over the door and he's like, when it's long jacket like this, he's like this, he just closes the door like that and it's like, oh, power. We wrote about Marlon Brando last week with power in The Godfather. It's the role. That's what it is. It's power. Didn't mention his name, John Cazale. That's how you pronounce it. Fredo Corleone. Killer in the first one. In this one,
way better in this one.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, there's that amazing scene that he has in the first one, which is with the casino guy. Do you know who I am? I'm so and so, Moss Green.
Oh yeah.
And that killer thing. And he's like, oh, you're knocking my brother around. He's like, he's been banging the cocktail waitresses, I've got a business to run like this. And Fredo's like, like we're just best pals, man. Because he's obviously like casino. He's at Las Vegas. Then he has his outburst in this one. He's like, you pass me. I'm your big brother. What are you on about? Am I all right? You don't get the thing. I'm smart like this. And I'm like, oh my God, like, how?
If you want to talk about that scene as well, just the continued, I know we mentioned this last week, the excellence of the cinematography here. Just that scene is so beautifully, softly lit in the perfect, this sort of like gorgeous environment of this snowy outside and this sort of much warmer interior that's having its warmth sort of like crept in on it.
Yeah.
It's just like, you look at this film and it's difficult to describe sometimes because you go back to exactly what you were just doing a second ago, where you go, how? You go, how? How are you able to do this consistently for 3 hours and then put a sequel out? That's another 3 hours where you keep doing it and you keep being bloody brilliant constantly.
Again, you have Robert Duvall, but he extends his role a little bit with Tom Hagen. He starts to get a bit more anxious about like the fact that Michael's like knocking him about a couple of things, not telling him stuff. He's like, I'll just be outside like this. You have Hyman Roth, who doesn't have much of a role, but I would say it's only subtle criticism, my only slight criticism is more characters are introduced. It's quite hard, a bit like Game of Thrones, it's quite hard to get an idea of all the characters where obviously Roth was not mentioned much in the first one.
Yeah.
And he suddenly comes in, this big figure character. You've got to understand that years have gone by. So where it threw Andy off, rewatching it again, it kind of threw me off because I kind of forgot the relationship of Roth with Michael. But once you buy into it, once you really ask conversations, you're on board.
Well, yeah, and I think so. I was having this conversation recently with somebody else about The Godfather suffers from one little problem, right? Which is that it is all about conversations that happen behind closed doors.
Yep.
And because of that, you don't get a lot of like name to visual representation. Yep. So it means they end up talking about like Hyman Roth, and there's the Corleones, and there's the Fugilis, and the Tagliatellis. And they all end up getting discussed in the same conversation without any sort of visual representation, which means it's very difficult to remember who's who, especially for an idiot like me that is very bad at names.
You sure are.
However, what the Godfather does, both 1 and 2 do, which is exquisite, is that it doesn't need you to remember most of that crap. Because in fact, what the Godfather 1 and 2 are mostly about
is killing people.
Sounds sappy. It's about family.
Yeah.
And they say it time and time again. It's all about family. As long as you know who the family are, as long as you know how they're,
the family.
Yeah, as long as you understand their interpersonal relationships, the rest of it kind of be damned. Obviously, you get more from it, like as long as you're kind of picking up on that stuff. But that is why The Godfather works so well, is because it remembers its own thematic motifs to the core. Now, one of my favorite moments in this film, though, is when a lot of that stuff gets pulled on and brought into the public light.
Oh, yeah, the court case.
And they're having the court case.
So just a little side note, it's Frank Pentangeli, Michael V. Gazzo. He was supposed to be the guy from the first one that's referenced in the intro scenes. I can't remember his name, but they couldn't get the guy on board. I'll come back to you in a second. So they couldn't actually, he wouldn't come on board and join the films. That's why they got a different guy in. But he's a Carpe Diem, he's a lieutenant. Go on.
He's Carpe Diem.
Wow.
So... funny enough, you mentioned that sort of thing.
Clemenza, he's kind of like the Clemenza guy.
I think watching the film, this didn't really bother me that much. But then afterwards, I read a little bit about the birthday scene at the end.
Oh, it's incredible.
Which is an
incredible
scene.
James Caan.
That has one little sort of like sour sort of element hanging over it. And it's that Brando wouldn't return for it.
Well, interestingly, Brando wouldn't return. And also, James Caan got paid either the same or more for that one scene alone than he did for the whole first film.
The same.
Which is not sad, whatever it is. His agent's probably just absolutely bounced into that deal.
Whatever. This film has made so much money
but
over
it's a shame.
the years.
I like that. I like the fact that the reference later on. I like the fact that you don't see him. I think it works.
So that's what I think. This full credit apparently goes to Coppola on this one, because when Brando didn't turn up for filming,
on the day. So this is, by the way, he didn't turn up on the day. So he rewrote it on the same day.
Exactly. So like, and the way he's rewritten it, and the way in which he has his camera linger on a lack of a presence, and instead have everybody move out,
like almost like nervous.
It's a very, very clever way of writing and producing something that doesn't make it feel like Brando is missing.
Because he arrives at the door and AHAI, and they're doing all the birthday stuff, happy birthday, and then it rests on Michael, who's just joined the Rangers.
It's a great way of having him separated from the family.
We'll go back to the black sheep. So you see that at the moment there, he's the black sheep, and then you see what happens. You see Michael go from rise up, not wanting to be part of the family, suddenly having to be the Godfather by proxy, and then suddenly he pushed everything out of his life. He kills his brother, his older brother dies, he kills his sister's husband. He pushes his wife away, his first wife dies down at the thing with him. He's lost everything.
Which, what a strength of a film to end on
such a sour note.
On a sour note, but also to end on such a confidence with this off-screen death. Doesn't feel a need to show violence.
Incredible. That's just such an incredible scene.
It's impeccable. And then obviously to kind of like that last sort of like moment where he's standing in the window. We're on the outside, looking in.
Great
and
shot.
He's just watching as we kind of fade. Like, I think it's just the film is,
it fades into the birthday scene. Yeah,
without a doubt,
amazing.
Without a doubt, one of the best sequels ever made.
Ever.
if not the best sequel ever made to an already incredible film. It's clear to see why the Godfather, I was going to say trilogy, but why the Godfather series is held in such high regard.
So,
but there is a Godfather Part 2. Now, you can let us know what you thought of the Godfather Part 2 down in the comments below. But Andy and I are going back once again next week, where we do the impossible. We round out the Godfather trilogy with the Godfather Part 3.
which I haven't seen either. So I'm looking forward, but not looking forward to this, because I don't want you to ruin my perspective of what the Godfather is.
I've heard some interesting things. Until then, get watching.